In this video, I'm going to point out a couple of things that ease the workflow transition from Snagit version 11 to Snagit version 12. But I'm also going to pose some challenges for our friends at Techsmith. I don't believe this was their best release, and I'll indicate why I believe they could have done better in this release. But first, let's take a look at a couple of the challenges that I initially had, and thanks to the help of the fine folks at Snagit, got some nice workarounds that will be able to ease the workflow going from 11 to 12. One of the issues I had with version 12 is that if you use the default way of doing the all-in-one capture, like I am now, it presents this intermediary dialog with the ability to capture image, capture video. So at this point, I could do a couple things. I can actually move. Oh, I really meant to capture up here. I could change its size. I meant to capture just a little bit more than I am. So this is sort of a pre-capture window. And at this point, I could hit video, and I could add video, either commentary or put some things into that window area and make it a video. Or I can hit capture the image, and it will do what it's normally done, which is pop up the Snagit editor. For me, if I want to capture video, typically I'll use Camtasia, but in some cases where I want to do a quick and dirty, I'll use Snagit. And if I were to do that, I would probably have a pre-built profile. So I do like to use Snagit profiles for those cases where I do the same kind of thing over and over again. What I don't care for is the fact that every time I do this, the intervening dialog shows up. Now, there's a nice workaround to this, but I want to say here and now that it really would have been nice of Snagit to have a preference somewhere in a setting that said, don't allow this to pop up. In that case, I could use the red button just like I always have, and I'm good to go. Not a huge deal because the workaround works nicely, but why do your UI changes so heavily towards the novice and new user kind of ignore, it feels like, your user base that's a little bit more experience and is able to do things in a little bit quicker way. So the workflow in this case is simply to remap going to the profiles, or you can go here, and this used to have print screen as the hotkey for the global hotkey. I simply got rid of that, and then I went to my image profile and gave that the hotkey. And so now when I hit print screen, which I actually did more in 11 than using the button, the intermediary dialog no longer displays. So that's good news. The other thing that I didn't care for is that in those cases where I needed to experiment and try different ways of capturing to get it to work, I've got a scrolling window within a window, and I don't know whether scrolling region is going to work or custom scroll is going to work, or I need to play around a little bit, or maybe I've got something I'm trying to do and I'm going to use freehand, whatever. In those cases where I'm playing around a little bit and I don't necessarily have pre-built profiles because I'm experimenting to get a capture to work well, in release 11 I would use the Snagit window. In release 11 I would use the Snagit window, and what I would do is I'd come here and I would select this and select the kind of thing I wanted to do, hit anything I would do with sharing or effects or time delay or whatever, and then simply hit the button, and then if that didn't work, come back to this window and try it again and again and again. In release 12 you don't quite have that same possibility. You do have the profiles window, and here it is, and you can leave it up, which is great, but you notice that there's no button here to do the capture with. Again, this is not a huge deal because, again, the help of our friends at Techsmith, I created a dynamic capture profile. I gave it a hotkey of Alt-D, and now I can come in, and this dialog is going to look very similar to Release 11. I could do the advanced things that I want to do, whatever it's going to be. I can change to delayed, not delayed, whatever I want to do, and then give it a try and see if that's really going to work for me. And then if that doesn't work, I can come back in and keep on doing it and not save the profile, and that's great. And I can use Alt-D as opposed to hitting the button here. So it's not a big loss by any stretch of the imagination to have this change. In some cases, I prefer, I'm already right on this dialog, just moving over and hitting that button was great, but it's not like it kills me to hit Alt-D. But it is a little bit more work. And so here's my main point. If you're going to do a release that changes workflow and actually the overall look, there ought to be something gained in that change, especially for your existing customer base. It feels like in this release that there is no outward benefit whatsoever to the release. There may be under the scenes benefits, under the engine benefits, but why change the outward piece? I think part of the reason why is you got a new release and you don't want to look exactly the same. But why lose functionality? So notice in this release, I can open the Snagit editor right from the Snagit window. I can turn off one click if I want. I can go grab some more profiles, and I can capture. So I can launch the editor. I can launch capture right from this window. I can't from here. Why did I lose that function? Or, to put it a different way, what changes to this UI made the experience for me better than it was in 11? I can't think of any additional functionality and or workflow that makes this work better. So while I can work around some of these changes, it sometimes feels like I'm going around my elbow to grab my thumb, but they aren't huge. But why change at all? Or why, if you're going to change the screen so that it's going to look slightly different in a new release so people recognize a new release, whatever, why not allow settings to continue to allow folks to use it like they have? So anytime you introduce change, there's some effort with that. I understand that. I appreciate that. And the effort ought to be made if there's a gain. In this case, it felt like there's not necessarily a loss, but there's certainly no gain to go through the change. You know, when I had to go through the process of learning the ribbon in Office, man, once you learn the ribbon, it's a much better way of going through things than the old menu. When I had to learn in the Vista and 7 releases of Windows to no longer go through the menu structure but simply use the search dialog to get to my programs, it was a reprogramming of me to do so, but man, it's so much better than what was there. And that's my question here. What is the payoff of going through a little bit of a learning curve to get to 12? It feels like there's no new benefits whatsoever for existing users other than some of the under the hood benefits that could have been done without changing the workflow. And benefits that we do see don't require workflow change. And one example that is a great reference here is if you look at Snagit Editor, yes, it's made darker, but that's really neither here nor there. There is some added function. So in this case, they've actually added ability to do new things. In particular, they made blur a lot easier. You could have done it before, but it was harder. The step thing is way cool, where if you're going to show somebody the steps that you go through to enter something, you select one of these guys and you just boom. That's step 1, that's step 2, that's step 3, that's step 4. I mean, it doesn't apply to this particular image, but wow, how cool is that? So they've added some functionality, but the workflow hasn't changed at all. Anybody that used 11 will quickly know how to do this in 12. Now again, change is worthwhile, but only if it adds. Here's function that's added, but you don't have to learn a whole lot of new stuff. And that's what I've loved about the previous releases. I mean, even when there was something to do that was different, the way that it was compacted, the way that it was brought around, all made it all better and cooler and able to do things more efficiently. And it is able to do things more efficiently if you do lots of image and video, or if you're a casual user, but not otherwise. So let's take a look at some of the changes for this release. I'm going to just focus on a few of those. Major refresh of the Snagit editor. Well, I mentioned those improvements, obviously. Introduce new method of capturing that no longer requires choosing an image or video and allows you to modify your selected area before finalizing the capture. As I noted earlier, that's nice for folks who do both a lot and or for those who are new to Snagit. Why not have that as a setting to not do that? Improve save workflow to give you easier way to keep your original video captures. That intermediary dialog, in my view, isn't easier. But I can see that it could be. Give us the option via a setting. Add a dedicated way to create, edit, and manage your Snagit profiles. It did have a way to do that earlier. It incorporated that, as it says in a later one, where it transitions one click into capture window, providing access to profiles. It did kind of incorporate that better, and I actually think that's a nicer way to handle some of that. And so I won't talk to the rest of these, but bottom line is, on every one of these, I think a choice point could have been made to either not change the workflow like they did with the Snagit editor, or give options in the workflow if you didn't want to do things in that new way. Thanks for listening.